All right, it is the B Block Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Scott. Appreciate you for joining me. Make sure that you are subscribed to the B Block Podcast wherever it is that you get them, especially on YouTube, doing this thing live. Gonna also post this thing for the audio only audience, but we are here to react to what turned out to be. I thought it started off slow. Championship Sunday, I thought it started off slow with the snow game between, unless you're into that sort of thing, right? I know a lot of people are into the old school late season in the snow, battling it out, not a whole lot of offense, just whichever team is tougher and grittier and grimier and can kind of just thug it out, so to speak. A lot of people are into that. I am not one of those people. I prefer to see football played at its maximum level and capacity, and I thought we got a lot closer to that with the NFC game as opposed to the AFC game. But we can touch on a little bit of both of them and really overall just where we are now with the Super Bowl. Okay, there are a number of different takeaways that you can have coming out of this game, especially depending on where your allegiances are. I have found it really fun and and somewhat entertaining watching the fan bases of the teams that did not make it to the championship game sort of have this like feeling that, man, not only should we be there, but if we were there, we could be doing what they're doing. That should be us. That could be us, but we was playing, right? I saw it from Texans fans. I've seen it a little bit from Bears fans. And so I'll get into that in just a little bit. But on this game, though, man, what an incredible game to watch. And I'm talking about Rams Seahawks. Of course, Seattle wins 31-27. And I thought it was fitting that the game would end with a Puka Nacua catch. That was an incredible grab by him. But of course, it did not, it didn't do anything for them because he was ruled inbounds, correctly ruled inbounds. His knee is inbounds when he catches the ball, and the game is over with. But in a game that had as many incredible plays in it as this one did, especially from the top receivers in this game, that being Puka Nacua on the Rams side, and of course JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba on Seattle side, I thought that was fitting. JSN probably had, I'm not going to say probably, I would say that JSN had the play of the game, not in terms of import or significance, but in terms of impressiveness. The one-handed grab on the sideline that he had was just sick. And a lot of people were pointing this out at the time. This is just kind of a typical thing for him. Like, you remember the Texans fans will remember the Kayshon Boutte one-handed grab that he had against the Texans, the one-handed grab in the end zone that kind of separated things a little bit. They were saying that was his first one-handed grab of his career. JSN, I have not been tracking his one-handed grabs throughout his career these last couple of seasons, but that seemed to be pretty much on brand for the type of receiver he is, the degree of difficulty, the route running, the hands. Like, he is just excellent. And I don't think we can say enough about how good he is. But I really, really enjoyed watching both of those receivers work. Both of the quarterbacks, who I'll get to in a second, enjoyed watching them work. But Nacua and JSN as a wide receiver one NFC championship game showdown, I'm here for that. And then I would also say that the number 2 wide receivers on both of these teams are about as good as you can find or as good as you can ask for when you're talking about an older Devontae Adams and older and more recently injured Cooper Kupp. Like, these are both guys that are long in the tooth, if you will. And I think that this has got to be a sweet moment for Cooper Kupp to do this in his home state against his old team where he won Super Bowl MVP. Like, that is massive, I think, for him. So those are some of the things that were standing out to me during the game. Let's talk about these pivotal plays, though, because I thought there were a couple of moments that really either swung the game or in the moment and at the time felt like they could swing the game and even perhaps decide the game. All right. So these were the moments. The third quarter had two of them, and it was won by both teams. Really, the three pivotal plays that I'm talking about, the three pivotal moments that I'm talking about, are two plays that happen or two moments that happen in the third quarter by each team. And then it's a coach's decision in the fourth quarter. That coach's decision being by Sean McVay. Let's talk about the first one, which I think is the most consequential. So might as well just go ahead and get it out of the way. The muff punt, like it was it was early enough in the third quarter for enough stuff to happen after that. Okay, it was early enough in the third quarter for enough stuff to happen after that for people to maybe forget about it or not think about it as much as a game swinging play as much as it is. Now I know Rams fans will never forget it, and I'm pretty sure if you go check out a Rams live stream or Rams podcast or anything that the Rams media is talking about right now, I'm pretty sure this muffed punt by Xavier Smith is coming up. It's probably being discussed and pointed out quite a bit. And look, I feel bad for the kid because it looks like he probably slipped, or not probably, he did slip, and then he just doesn't catch the ball, which is like task and rule number one. It's got to be like the first thing that you do. Doesn't catch the ball, and of course, immediately after that, it doesn't take very long. One play, 17 yards, touchdown, right? Like you muff the punt, and essentially, like instead of it being a punt, you basically give them like a long play, like a long yardage play, set them up at the 17-yard line, and they promptly go and score the touchdown. The swing at that moment is huge because Seattle is up 17-13 at the time. They're punting the ball, and the Rams have a chance to go ahead to the go ahead score, the go ahead drive is what that would have been and should have been. Instead, they basically gifted Seattle a touchdown, gifted them points, and I thought that swung the game. I thought even in the moment, in a game that I expected to be close, that felt like a game changing, and in the Rams case, a game costing type of play. It felt like that. And sure enough, the Rams go back down and they score that exact touchdown that I'm talking about. What would have been the go ahead touchdown, but only had them down, or at that point had them down by 4. So that's a huge moment early in the third quarter that happens that I think was really difficult for the Rams to recover from. And ultimately they did not. They did not recover from that. That they lose by 4 points, and 7 of them was gifted to the other team. So I mean, it's hard to not, like, I'm not trying to bag on Xavier Smith, but it's hard not to look at that play and look at that moment and not feel like it changed the game entirely. Champ Slice, what's up, man? And shout out to Champ Slice, man. Brought Champ Slice over from the Sports Radio 610 YouTube, I feel like, and he's in the building. My first comment, too, by the way. So y'all want to get in here and got anything to say, feel free to drop your comments in the chat. Champ Slice says that both Peyton and McVay should have kicked the field goals. I'm getting to that. Definitely getting to that because I would say a theme of the playoffs now, so much so that I've even lost track of all of them, but a theme in the commentary around these playoffs has been how coaches have sort of lost their minds on fourth down in terms of going for it, whether it's going away from the analytics or leaning too much into them and not having a great feel for the game, like, or for the moment. That has been a kind of an underlining theme for these playoffs. So, and so we'll get to that because that is one of the pivotal plays that I'm talking about. So later in the third quarter, you also had what at the time felt like it could have been a game changing play in the other direction. And Look, man, I'm here for trash talk. I'm here for uh bravado. I'm here for vibes, for for aura, swag, all of that. But Reek Woolen, and that taunting penalty when it was fourth down and they were getting off the field to give the Rams life at that point. Okay, to give the Rams life at that point and to have that taunting penalty, that is just something that cannot happen, simply cannot happen in a postseason game, in a championship game with an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. It just cannot happen. And then, okay, he gives up the touchdown. So he gets the taunting penalty, and then he gives up the touchdown to Puka Nakua, which I don't think that there is any shame or any like there's no shame in giving up that play to Puka Nakua. Better players, I'm not gonna say better players, but like a far better cornerback, a far better defensive back, a far better player could give up a play like that to Puka Nakua and not hang his head about it. But you give up that play right after the the penalty that just simply cannot happen and was not supposed to happen, keeps them on the field and keeps you on the field. And then he had also dropped an interception. So like that sequence right there really could have been, I thought, had the potential to be backbreaking. It put the Rams back in the game or gave them life, gave them hope, gave them a fourth quarter that was way more interesting and compelling than it was supposed to be because of that play. So I thought that was a game, potentially game changing play. At least it felt like it. It ended up not being one because of what Champ Slice is talking about. Going back to this comment here, where Sean Payton in the first game and Sean McVay, both Seans, um, should have kicked the field goal. I look, I thought at the time, okay, I'm sitting here watching this game with my girl, and she's like, "What would you do right here?" And this is before we realize that they're about to line up and go for it on fourth down. Okay, it's fourth and what was it like? Fourth and 4 inside the red zone, and Sean McVay decides to go for it, down 31-27. And I told her, I said, you know what, I would take the points here. I would take the points here because it's a close game. And if it comes down to it, if this is the score toward the end of the game, I'd much rather be, if I'm rallying, okay, and they were rallying, they were behind and would still be behind with the field goal. If I'm rallying, I'd much rather be trying to engineer a field goal drive than have to engineer a touchdown drive at that point. That was what I thought at the time. But then, like in the moment, then when I see them line up, I'm gonna be honest. When I see them line up to go for it, I told her, I said, man, I like this. I actually like this. To put like just it's ballsy. You're putting the confidence in your offense and your MVP quarterback, your Super Bowl winning quarterback. Y'all came here to win the game. Y'all gonna try to take the lead now, not later, now. And I actually liked and respected it, even though I was, I say on record. I was gonna say on record. It was only my girl heard me, but even though I told her right then and there, hey, I would take the points. I think the points matter more than anything right now, like any points. So I thought he should have kicked that field goal, and I thought it would have made that final drive that they were on. Of course, they only had 25 seconds left, and the way it ended, we talked about the Puka Nakua catch, like that even that wasn't going to put them in field goal range. So the point I'm making there is they never even got in the field goal range to begin with. But you got to think that the drive that you're starting, I wonder if that changes your play calling at all, or if anything changes at all, if you're going for 3 instead of 6. And maybe not. But in that moment, and Then later at the end of the game, it felt like, man, it would be a lot better for the Rams if they were down 31-30 instead of 31-27. And the opportunity cost there and going for it on fourth down was just too great. Even though I liked it. I liked it, but I'm also somebody that was not invested and didn't have anything to lose. It wasn't my trip to the Super Bowl that was on the line there. So easy for me to say from my couch, but in the moment, definitely would have kicked the field goal and would have tried to just go ahead and get those points. Champ Slice mentions how Seattle dropped 9 after showing blitz. Stafford didn't know what to do. This is a great point, Champ, because I thought that like Mike McDonald, just a phenomenal job, coaching job that he's done over these last couple of years to get the Seahawks to where they are right now. And that's something that both coaches can say that probably should be a much higher story in all of this is the turnaround, the quick turnaround that both of these teams have had over the last couple of years. And in the Patriots case, just this year, in year one of Mike Vrabel and year two of Drake May. And then the reverse of it with Seattle in year two of Mike McDonald and year one with the quarterback and Sam Darnold. Incredible job. Now, this has been pointed out, I think, on social media by a couple of people. Maybe it was just when the Patriots did it, but both teams in the Super Bowl right now are quicker. They basically made it to the Super Bowl before the Texans did, and they're shorter along in the process of their rebuild. That's the point I'm trying to make there. Seattle and New England both added the coach that they have and the quarterback they have since the Texans added theirs, and they made it. They made it, which is only to say it can be done. It's not something that you got to wait forever to do, especially in football. You hit on the right combination, and I do think that the Texans have the right combination in those areas. They just haven't done all of the other things per se that these teams have done. But yeah, that part stood out to me. Champ Slice mentioned in the dropping 9 after showing blitz. I thought Tom Brady did an incredible job of pointing this out, but it was, clear as day. They showed 9 at the line of scrimmage. Rush 2 got 9 guys out in coverage. And on that fourth down play that we're talking about. And it was an incredible job because on the one hand, you're like, let's just bring the house, right? They showing 9, it's fourth down. Let's just bring the house and put Matthew Stafford on his ass. On the other hand, you're like, Matthew Stafford is surgical with his shit. Surgical with it. He will pick apart a blitz. Like you had you actually blitzed him, then it probably would have been a guaranteed touchdown because he knows exactly what to do and where to go with the football when there's extra pressure and when there's not enough people in coverage. So a brilliant job to Champ Slice's point of showing blitz to confuse them, but not giving them all of those damn options to go with the football if you had actually blitzed the quarterback. Thought it was really good. What else we got in the comments section here before I move on to the next thing? Brandon says front office looks dumb as hell right now. I say this, and I'm assuming Brandon because I'm assuming you're talking about the Texans front office. It did stand out to me, especially watching Seattle, which really, can we just take a moment to appreciate the fact that Seattle is a flawless football team? They don't really have any weaknesses. They don't really have a thing that any holes in their game where you can point out and be like, you know what, they don't do that very well. During the season, when the Texans played them on Monday Night Football, I did try to point out that they don't necessarily run the ball all that well, but they're committed to it. And that's what opens up a lot of the things that they do downfield, especially their play action game, obviously. And just, I think the commitment to the run game there's something about forcing that level of physicality on the opposing team that I think is valuable, even when you're not running it effectively. And the Seahawks seem to understand that. But not just that. That's not giving them enough credit. That's how I felt when the Texans played them during the year. But you watch them today, and Kenneth Walker the fourth, that's got to be one of the better players that nobody talks about. Nobody, and I was thinking about this with both teams. It's like, man, Kyron Williams, I'm pretty sure is an all-pro pretty recently. No one really talks about him because they got Matthew Stafford, they got Puka Nacua, they've got Devontae Adams now. They had Cooper Kupp on the team. Like they got stars on the team that make you kind of just forget about the running back. He's really good. Kenneth Walker, quick, fast, strong, just an excellent running back. And so, like, if you wanted to point to that as a weakness of their team, I would challenge you on that. And I don't think you can exactly do that. So I say all of that to say, back to Brandon's point about the front office looking dumb as hell right now. If not dumb, they definitely look like they came up short when in terms of outfitting this team with all of the things that these other teams had. Like, did anybody else sit around and watch, especially the NFC game, and think, man, the Texans don't have any of this, or at least not enough of this? Like, I thought that, like I probably spent the last week feeling like a huge opportunity was missed. Like the Texans should have been in the championship game with an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. And I do think that if they had beaten the Patriots, that they could have beaten that Denver team that did not impress me when they beat the Texans here in Houston. And then that's where they should have been. And I felt that way all the way up until watching this last game, because there was just not a team on the field that I thought the Texans could beat. I didn't think that watching the Rams play, and if they had won, I didn't think that watching the Seahawks play, and they did win. And on the Seahawks behalf, it's because of how well-rounded of a team it is. Like, they just don't have any weaknesses, like I mentioned. And then with the Rams, it was just a straight-up playmaking that they got between Matthew Stafford and C.J. Stroud. Newsflash, still got work to do. Not quite on that level yet. No shame in that. Matthew Stafford is probably the MVP. And then even with Puka Nacua, as much as I love Nico Collins, the Texans and probably no team has as good of a combination of receivers as Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams right now, or as good of a combination of quarterback and two receivers. Right? If you were to do rank them all together, right? Bring them all together and do like who's got the best three-headed monster in terms of quarterback and two receiving options. You might go Bengals, Burrow, and Chase and Higgins, but hell, they never in it no more. They're teetering on the brink of irrelevance now. And so outside of that, like so front office couldn't create that. Couldn't create what Seattle had. And the biggest thing is the run game, right? I've been talking about this. Every team that's defensively led has at least something that they do on offense that's elite. Whether that's throwing the ball downfield, whether that's running the ball, whether it's just being straight up elite at the dink and dunk, quick game, whatever it is. Every team that's defensively led, that isn't really thought of for their offense, does at least have an offensive identity, does at least have something that they can lean on and say, hey, this is what we do. Not the whole game plan offense, but like, we do this well, right? Texans never had that. So I get a front office credit, Brandon, obviously, for putting together the defense that they did. And I think last year in 2024, the front office had maybe the best year. The Texans front office, that is, had the best year that they've ever had. I wish they had tried to replicate that more for 2025, and I hope that they try to do it for 2026. See what else we got in the comment section. Champ Slice says, I'm here hurting having to root for the same team as Mariners fans. I'll be damned if I ever root for New England. Yeah, I think I'm with you there. Like, first of all, I'm not rooting for New England, but the Seahawks are rootable, likable. What's the word I'm looking for? There's an appeal to the Seahawks, both they're like, and I understand the Mariners fans and the Seahawks fans are the same people. There's overlap there, but I like them a lot better as Seahawks fans than I do as Mariners fans. I'm sure it has a lot to do with the whole Astros Mariners dynamic, but man, I can't help but to respect the way that they should support that team, how insane that stadium feels whenever they play there. Like, I've said this about Seattle and particularly the football team. I want to go to a game there so bad. I've never been to Seattle, and of course, never been to a Seahawks game in Seattle. But it just looks like an incredible environment, beautiful city, and like even when it's raining, beautiful city, and that environment, man, all of it jumps through the screen and the speakers. You can feel that it's a big deal out there. You can feel it. So I actually don't mind as much rooting for Seahawks fans. It's just when the summer rolls around, when the spring and summer rolls around and they morph into Mariners fans is when I'll start to not like them nearly as much. But I'm with you, Champ Slice, on that point. Nay brings up the Texans. She says the Texans were a Sam Darnold. The Texans were a Sam Darnold away from making the Super Bowl. Never thought I'd say that out loud. Look, Sam Darnold, okay? If I haven't said this already, I'll say it now. And if I have said it, I'll just say it again. Sam Darnold exercised all demons in this playoff run. All right. I think you can point to all. Let's just do the three quarterbacks that were starters in this. Okay, put Stidham aside, and just rinse, wash, repeat what I've said about Bo Nix over the last week or so, and giving him his credit. Matthew Stafford looked like an MVP, even in defeat. Drake May, despite not putting up gaudy numbers a bunch of times, he's looked poised for the most part. I think there was a little shake and did not turn the ball over today, which turned out to be the key to winning the game. It was simply possessing the ball and not giving the ball to the other team. Of course, Denver did that, and probably a big difference in the game, aside from some coaching decisions that you might want to quibble with. But Matthew Stafford looked like an MVP. Drake May has not necessarily looked like an MVP runner-up. Like, if you just plop somebody into the playoffs and watch him play, you wouldn't necessarily watch him and think, oh, that's second to the MVP. But the poise and the calm and the playmaking, the scrambles, right? Doing it with his legs, as he should be at this age, third youngest quarterback to go to his first Super Bowl. Right there behind Dan Marino and Ben Roethlisberger. So he gets to be in that conversation. Got to give him credit. But then Sam Darnold exorcising all demons that haunted him throughout his career. Any notion that Sam Darnold can't show up in a big game, any notion that Sam Darnold is fool's gold, or any of that, gone, dead. Sam Darnold's career has been vindicated by this moment, win or lose in the Super Bowl. Now, he goes out there and throws 4, 5, 6 picks in the Super Bowl. People are going to remember that. People are going to talk about that. But I do think Seattle is going to win this game. I do think that they're going to win the Super Bowl. And Sam Darnold is going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And I just want to ask y'all, I want to pose this question to the audience. What do we do with that? What do we do with that, with how far we've come on the Sam Darnold conversation? What do we do? I don't know, but it goes to show you how quickly a narrative can flip. Like the Sam Darnold now enter into like a Joe Flacco type of conversation where goes to a Super Bowl, maybe even wins this Super Bowl, and if he does, it's like, man, no one really looks at him as like one of the elite quarterbacks of his time. But you can't take that run away from him. You can't take that season away from him. And what has he done now? Back-to-back years with double-digit wins and then a Super Bowl appearance. I know he turned into a pumpkin last year in the playoffs. But back-to-back wins back-to-back seasons leading two different franchises to double-digit wins, and then one of them you take to the Super Bowl. Whew. Credit where it's due. What does Minnesota got to be thinking right now? I feel like, and I'm talking about the Vikings to be clear, like, you know, a lot going on in Minnesota right now, but the Vikings specifically, what do the Vikings fan base got to be thinking right now? And the Vikings themselves, what does Justin Jefferson got to be thinking right now? Do they wonder if, man, if Sam Darnold is still our quarterback, how close could we have been to this? And I don't think that the Vikings were Sam Darnold away from getting to the Super Bowl, to be clear. But I think this year does validate the idea that they made or I guess invalidate their decision to move on from Sam Darnold and stick with J.J. McCarthy. If you ask anybody in the league right now, who would you rather have? It's probably the guy that's in the Super Bowl and not the guy that Justin Jefferson is trying his best to speak kindly about. Champ Slice says he doesn't have beef with the Seahawks. He has beef with the people of Seattle. All right, well, fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, that is this is how the game is sort of shape shifting in terms of history. Because I feel like we got to talk about Sam Darnold differently now. Feel like you got to talk about him a little bit differently. I did think in terms of for the Texans, it's cool that the teams that did end up in the Final Four, all four of the teams are teams that beat the Texans. The Texans lost a total of what, 6 games this year? Right? Is that right? 5 in the regular season and then the playoff game. Well, 4 of those were to teams that were finalists to go to the Super Bowl, finalists in their conference. I think that speaks to them being a good team. I think it's real easy to bag on the Texans for how it all ended and maybe not fully appreciate. And I talked about this on the radio during the week of balancing accountability with appreciation. Lopez tried to press me on this side note. Lopez tried to press me on this on In the Loop. And I just went on and leaned into the accountability part of it because that's clearly what he wanted. But my take was my take. And that is that there is a balance without leaning in one way, in one direction or the other. There is a balance between accountability and appreciation for the season that they had. Accountability for turning the ball over 4 times and not really establishing an offensive identity at any point in the season. They should be held accountable for that from top to bottom. And then appreciation for the fact that this was a really good football team that really only lost to the 4 teams that were finalists in their conference with a chance to go to the Super Bowl. The Bucks early in the year. And I'm forgetting one. Oh, Jacksonville. I'm forgetting that one because that was their worst. I understand Jacksonville turned out to be a really good team, but that was one of the worst games that I've watched, maybe ever. But certainly one of the worst. It was definitely the worst game that I've watched between 2 teams that were supposed to be good and actually turned out to be good that year. So, yeah, man, definitely a difficult a difficult thing to digest and accept that the Texans could have been in this position and probably should have been in this position. I mentioned earlier about the fan bases out there that are, got a little bit of jealousy. My guy Jason Goff, who's actually a Chicago guy, does media out there in Chicago, been a radio guy out there for a while, um, and is now doing a show with The Athletic that appears on Amazon. And he's also got a podcast with The Ringer called The Full Go. I'm a fan of it. Y'all should check it out. But he likes to make these sly jokes on Twitter that I find amusing. And he had this one that really hit me in the chest because I'm here in the midst of it all, and I'm seeing all of the C.J. Stroud talk. I'm even participating in it. The put in Davis Mills at halftime. Davis Mills would have won us this game. All of this kind of stuff, right? And some of y'all in the chat have participated in this and feel this way. But after the Patriots win, a game that left a lot to be desired in terms of entertainment, 17 points scored total. They win 10-7. Jason Goff says that we're one Davis Mills half away from things being a lot different. How does that hit y'all as Texans fans to think about that? Because I'm not trying to do the continuous bag on CJ thing like even a week later. And I even said that, like, replacing CJ Stroud at halftime is just a little bit more complicated than he's simply playing bad, playing poorly. I think there's a little bit more into it that goes into it politically and just like overall. But I can't get over the idea of if Davis Mills had even started that game, right? And I have hated the commentary around this. I have hated the idea that people would say, "Oh, well, C.J. Stroud's not as good as Davis Mills, or Davis Mills is better than C.J. Stroud." I think people who talk like that are insane. However, I don't feel like Davis Mills would have turned the ball over the way he did. I also don't feel like he gives you as high of a ceiling. And let's not forget Davis Mills in his 3 games, and the best football that he played was with Nico Collins. There was no Nico Collins in that game. But something in me does say that at the very least he would not have been as rattled as it seemed like the starter was. It is the thing that I respected the most about Davis Mills from when he was an actual starter to these last few years as he's been the backup, and particularly this year. The dude just does not rattle. He doesn't. He is not as talented as your most high-end guys. Hell, he's not even as talented, I don't think, as Sam Darnold. Certainly not as like Matthew Stafford or even Drake May or C.J. Stroud for that matter. But the dude has a calm about him, almost stoic and robotic, if you will, that I think would have benefited them in that game. It is the one part of Davis Mills, because you want to be careful about talking like, what can C.J. Stroud learn from Davis Mills and all this other kind of stuff. Like, he's a better football player. He just flat out is. But that part, which I don't know if that's something that is innate or if it's something that you can develop over time. That you can develop over time. I know people have talked about wanting C.J. Stroud to see a sports psychologist. I'm not in his head. I don't know if he actually needs a psychologist or anything. But I would like to see his heartbeat a little bit more like Mills, but keep his actual game that he has. And maybe that's something that will come in time. Sam Darnold is also a lesson, I think, in not giving up on a quarterback too soon. Okay, and I'm not saying that the Jets shouldn't have given up on him or that Carolina shouldn't have given up on him. He deserves credit for the revitalization of his career. Okay, like he just flat out deserves credit for that because he was a pumpkin at one point. There was validity in not believing that a Sam Darnold led team could really win big, or that there even should be a Sam Darnold led team. There was validity to that, and now there ain't. So that's how the narrative can flip. That's how the narrative can change when you go out there and your surroundings are excellent. Your team, your the team around you is put together well, and you can go out there and thrive. He's had that in both of the last two seasons. In Minnesota last year and in Seattle this year, you got to see what it looks like when the environment is proper. He's a better player. CJ Stroud, what he needs is, first of all, a front office that is going to equip him with an offense that has an identity, that has a clear identity. Okay. So if you're going to put more on CJ Stroud's shoulders, you need to give him more weapons than just Nico Collins and some rookies who are talented but are trying to figure things out. I said this earlier in the season and people thought I was crazy. Like, oh, it's the NFL. You rely on rookies. It's not a. I thought that they were overly relying on rookies by the time we got to the start of the regular season, in a way that I did not think that they would be when they first drafted those rookies, or was at least hoping that they wouldn't be. Turned out to be way overly relying on rookies at the end of the year. And to be fair to those rookies, they played well, but all played outsized roles for what the Texans were trying to accomplish this year. Offense needs to be way better than that. From the offensive line to the weaponry to the run game, it just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. They did not do enough on offense. And that's not even me bagging Kaylee. All right, who I know is an easy target. And I think I'm on the record of saying I wouldn't have even brought him in to begin with. Like, so I got a tough time being mad at somebody that I would not have brought in to begin with. Now that he's here, I'm not necessarily grading him on a curve, but I'm also trying not to hold against him the fact that I did not want him to be hired to begin with. And within the confines of this offense, within the context of this offense, I should say, I thought Nick Caley eventually started to call some decent games, started to scheme up some guys wide open. The beginning of it, and if you want to look at it as totality for the Texans, I can see you not being in love with the first-year play caller. But by the end of it, the play caller to me wasn't as much of the issue as it was the offense and the offensive person, I should say the personnel that was being used in said play caller. Woody Marks, love Woody Marks. Was excited when they drafted him. Was even more excited when I saw how excited John Harris, my guy John Harris from the Houston Texans, how excited he was. I'm glad Woody Marks is on this team. That was supposed to be your change of pace back, not your workhorse. Nick Chubb, loved him in his role. Said this on the last stream. That was probably supposed to be like your short yardage back. Not somebody that had as big of a role as he ended up having. And they only end up getting him, I think, in anticipation that they wouldn't have Joe Mixon. But they needed, the running game needed to be better. The weaponry outside of Nico Collins. And I suspect that they thought Christian Kirk could be that for them. But of course, the injuries started to catch up. That's been a theme of his career over the last 3-4 years or so. After whenever year one in Jacksonville was. So the last 3 seasons or so, that's kind of been his thing. You can kind of expect that now as a trend that this is a guy that's going to get banged up at some point. Or at least this is a guy that has dealt with injuries throughout the last few seasons. Maybe we don't rely on him as our wide receiver number 2. And that's before we even talk about the offensive line, which is the biggest one. Didn't do enough in terms of weapons. didn't do enough with the run game, the running back position. And I'm a little bit more understanding of the running back thing because the Joe Mixon situation is just odd. Nobody really knows what happened, and I don't think whatever happened is the Texans' fault. So, and something that I was hitting on with Kim Davis when she was on with me earlier in the week, like how different does the offense look if they got Joe Mixon? I'll be honest. Part of me deep down believes that they are in the Super Bowl right now if Joe Mixon plays. I think that. Now, of course, that also means that the quarterback couldn't have turned the ball over 4 times against the Patriots. Like does that still happen? Even with Joe Mixon out there, does that still happen? Now, mind you, they couldn't run the ball in that game. So a lot more was put on CJ Stroud. But I think they win, and I think that they're in the Super Bowl if Joe Mixon plays. But then not enough on the offensive line either. That's where it was lost. I think these other teams are a lot more well-rounded when it comes to that, and have been a lot more well-rounded when it comes to that. Oh man, I have not been showing the comments on the stage the way I should have been all of this time. That's a cool little feature that I don't think I even necessarily have ever played with. The people on the audio only are going to be like, "What the hell is this guy talking about?" But yeah, rooting for Seattle in the Super Bowl. Feel like they're the most well-rounded team. Feel like Sam Darnold has exercised his demons. That we're going to have to do something different with him when we talk about him in terms of like the quarterbacks, right? Haven't we done the thing with Sam Darnold where we like kind of pretend like the rest of the team is just carrying him along and he's just like a bus rider instead of a bus driver? I, I don't know how you can say that after watching this game. JSN is having his career year, this incredible season. How does he get the ball? Right? And now he gets the ball by getting wide the fuck open. I get that. And even when he doesn't, just by catching every damn thing. Give him credit for that. But nah, Sam Darnold deserves his flowers for this moment. Definitely does. It helps the last 2 years that he's had arguably the best receiver in football that particular year. Like he had Justin Jefferson the year before. He's got JSN now. And they could run the ball last year. They can run the ball now. Had Brian Flores' defense last year has a defensive head coach now. And when Seattle puts together a defense, they put together a damn defense, boy. And they did that. Came away from this game being really, or came away from the weekend being really envious of how these teams were put together. And I think the Texans were a well put together team, except for those fatal flaws that they had on the offensive side of the ball. And again, I hope, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I hope that the commentary we heard this past week from the general manager, from Nick Caserio, was just like talk, public positioning or like defending yourself and your team by saying that they never thought that the offense was a concern. I hope it is a concern. I hope it's a real concern, and I hope it's the key focus for them this offseason is figuring out, not can we just piece together an offensive line with duct tape and coaching, but can we put together like a championship offensive line? The Joe Mixon thing. That was a good move last year by bringing in Joe Mixon. That's the type of running, but they ain't had no running back like that. They haven't had a running back like that since the Arian Foster days. That's what you need. And hopefully, if it's not Joe Mixon, and part of me seriously doubts that it is, that whatever they do with the running back position is a little bit more serious than what they did this year. And then Champ Slice mentions here how it comes down to coaching. I think coaching's got to be better too. And I'm a lot higher on the Texans coaching staff than I think a lot of people are, especially with how the season ended. But all of that's got to be better. So this is fun. This is a good game. Good weekend, I should say. Now, I don't know how much people were expecting from Broncos, Patriots. Went by as how I expected it, right? The first half, you had Jared Stidham have a moment, and then he came back down to earth. That like he kind of cooled off after that. And then the weather really came through at halftime, apparently. And then there was nothing in halftime or after halftime. So um I don't know what people were really expecting from that game, but it went about how I expected it. Now I will say this before I get out of here about the Patriots defense, because I've done a lot of talking about Seattle. The Patriots defense is ascending at the perfect time. At the perfect time. I think that it is unfair to focus too much on Drake May and simply Mike Vrabel and not focus enough on Zach Kerr and these defensive players, because what they're doing, I think, is outstanding. Right? If you go back to, let's just look at all three of their playoff games right now and how they've been discussed, at least from my vantage point. They beat the Chargers 16-3, and the conversation is about Justin Herbert coming up short in another big game, not being able to win a big game. And it's all about Justin Herbert and him not playing well. And very little, I'm not going to say none of it, but very little about how excellent that Patriots defense was in that game. They deserve credit for that. Holding the Chargers to 3 points like they did in the playoff game. The next week, they play the Texans. Of course, us as Houstonians, as people who follow the Texans, fixated on all the missed and blown opportunities by the Texans, the turnovers by the quarterback in the first half, the fumble by the running back. Without giving credit to enough credit to simply just punching that ball out. Was that Spillane that did that? Whoever it was that punched the ball out against Woody Marks. That was an incredible defensive play. Woody Marks, you would like for him to hold on to the football play or to the football, but that was a hell of a play. As Champ Slice is mentioning here, Stephon Diggs and Kayshon Boutte made some great catches. There were some great plays, and those were great throws by Drake May. Okay. The Patriots deserve more credit for what they did to win the game than I think that they got, especially from people viewing it with through a Houston lens, through a Texans lens. But the defense, they won that game up front by like a lot, especially their defensive front against the Texans' offensive front. But then on the other side, like, or not on the other side, but just the defense overall, beyond just the front, they've got an excellent corner. They got linebackers that get after it. They don't have no stars on the defense, really, like no true superstars, but also a defense that is just solid. And then you get to this game. So kind of going back again, I kind of got off track there. Attention taken away from the Patriots defense against the Chargers because Justin Herbert, that conversation. attention taken away from them against the Texans because of C.J. Stroud in that situation. Christian Gonzalez is a bad dude. He would be the one star that I would point out. Fair point, champ slice. So the attention is taken away from their defense in that game. Attention probably taken away from their defense a little bit in this game because they were going up against a backup quarterback in Jarrett Stidham. And so throughout all of that, I feel like it's been real easy to overlook how well the Patriots defense is playing and how good they've been throughout this stretch. I just refuse to do it. I refuse to not acknowledge how well that they've played. The blitzes, we were giving Mike McDonald credit for showing blitz and then dropping everybody back in coverage on that fourth down play, that failed fourth down play for the Rams. A little bit of the opposite with the Patriots and their defense, man, just like leaning heavily on the blitz, right? And especially in this game against a backup quarterback, they're sending 5, 6 at Jarrett Stidham and making him make decisions, making him handle the pressure. And they did that against Herbert. They did that against Stroud. Confusing them, blitzing them. Excellent stuff. So I don't know if, there are a lot of people that are like, man, I'm not watching this game. I'm not watching this weekend, man. It hurts too much that the Texans aren't in it. You definitely missed out in the Rams Seahawks game. And I think that the Super Bowl is going to be fantastic too. I really do. I think the Seahawks are going to win and that Sam Darnold is going to have kind of a similar, I'm not saying he's going to play as well as Jalen Hurts did in the Super Bowl last year, but he's going to be in a similar space for people who are reluctant to put him in like the upper echelon of quarterbacks, don't really feel like he's one of the top quarterbacks, but can't pretend like he did not just play a pivotal role in his team right now going to the Super Bowl and potentially winning the Super Bowl. We're going to have to put some respect on Sam Darnold's name. And then the Patriots run is just, that's probably the one that really hurts because you felt like you should have beat that team. And then both of these teams are much shorter along, not nearly as far along in their development processes as franchises with their coaches and their quarterback as you are. You have longer tenured coach quarterback combination than either one of the two teams that are in the Super Bowl. You do? Don't really love that. Don't really love that feeling. So Super Bowl's gonna be lit. I'm not going. Not even going to Radio Row. I think the station is going to Radio Row, and I think I'm probably gonna take the week off. So take the week off from work. I mean, not from y'all. I'll probably still do plenty of videos, plenty of streaming, plenty of all of that. So that's gonna be fun. Make sure that y'all are here for it. Before that, make sure that you come back to the B Block a couple of days. I'm gonna have Chance Johnson on. Me and Chance, we always have a good time on the B Block, chopping it up. We're definitely gonna talk some Texans, but we're gonna switch it up for y'all a little bit because the football offseason, at least for Houstonians, the offseason is upon us. And unlike some of these other Houston content creators, I am not about to obsess over the Texans offseason. We're gonna cover it, we're gonna talk about it. If you want nonstop wall-to-wall Texans offseason coverage, there are places for you to find that, and I hope you find it and support the hell out of that. But me and Chance, we're going to talk about Kingston Flemings' 42-point game against Texas Tech and how really it's U of H that should be taking center stage right now I know college basketball ain't what it used to be. I know basketball in this city ain't what I wish it was. But I'll be damned if we don't show them Cougs some love. I'm talking about even in a loss to Texas Tech. The 42 points that freshman point guard Kingston Flemings put up against Texas Tech on Saturday was one of the more impressive performances that I've seen from a college player. And as good of a performance as you'll see from a college basketball player, period. And as y'all know, Chance is now working with the Big 12 Network. Man, he went back and watched the game again. Shout out to him. I wish I did have time to go back and watch that game again. I definitely would. But we're going to get his thoughts on it. Get his thoughts on what U of H is doing right now, their chances to go back to the national championship game and perhaps even win it this year. So make sure y'all stay tuned for that. In the meantime, you can subscribe to the B-Block Podcast on YouTube. Also, wherever it is you get your podcast. And until next time, y'all be good.